What a time to be discussing, guys, school choice. I think that it's safe to say that school choice has been one of the hottest topics in this past session. We've talked about it at length. We had legislation on this as well, and I think what this comes down to in many ways is empowering families and empowering parents, parental empowerment, family empowerment. And so I think, with the state of Texas and with our guidelines, the truth is you can't design an education system that fits the needs of all students at all times, right? What you can do is you can give them choices, you can give them options. And so that's kind of what we're here discussing right now. And I want to start with you, Michael, because school choice, motivating factor, of course, is empowering parents and empowering families. Kind of what does that mean, and what have we seen going forward to what school choice means?
Of course. Thank you very much. Is there, Michael?
Yep.
Can you all hear me? Great. And I'm grateful for your all's time this afternoon. First, just wanted to start with that note of gratitude. Thank you very much. We are dedicated to the cause of parent empowerment. And the reason that we're dedicated to that cause is because, as Member Maynard said, children belong to their parents. They do not belong to the community. The parents, a mother and a father, are the first and primary educators of their children. That being the case, parents deserve 4 things in their children's education that we are working towards. Transparency, to know what their kids are taught and why. Quality, to be assured that their kids are being prepared for success when they graduate. Respect, if they have concerns about their children's education, the quality or their transparency, they should be met with a respectful process. And choice. And choice is really what's going to be the topic of the special session. Choice looks different in different communities, and we can get into the details of that, what that looks like in a school district or in charter schools or with an education savings account. But every parent has the responsibility to educate their children, and the state has the role of supporting parents in that responsibility.
I think since the title of our panel is What's So Special About School Choice, Representative Schatzline, thank you for being here. If you would just talk a little bit about what is so special.
Oh, it's fantastic. And again, honored to be here. Thank you so much. And Jonathan for allowing me to be a part of this. And thank you for being here. It was very well said. When we're looking at education savings accounts, if you'll notice, there's not something that's more attacked from the left when it comes to education than looking at giving choice back to parents. How many of you believe that parents should have the final say in their child's education? And so looking at what we're seeing right now is we are seeing an absolute monopoly with public schools, as these public schools have literally created and built a system where they are not built to please the parent, they're built to please an agenda. And so what school choice does is it simply says, no, we're gonna shift the power structure back to who God originated to be in charge of education in the beginning, and make sure that we are building out our school boards and educators in such a way that if a parent does not feel that the education system that their child is in is meeting their specific needs, then they have every right, and we believe that this is a God-given right, to be able to take the funding that's going towards the public education system and say, no, you're not using my tax dollars to indoctrinate the next generation. We're going to reallocate those to a school that we trust to partner, and I think that's the key word, partner with us as parents to be able to show that my child's going to be educated and not indoctrinated. And so these, in very simple terms, education savings accounts is ensuring that parents know that their tax dollars are going towards the educational process that's actually leading to education and not indoctrinating the next generation in the public school system. But I will give a disclaimer. I still believe there's hope in our public education system. We've just got to shift the power structure back to where parents have the final say, and they get to actually control and contribute to what their children are learning.
Couldn't agree more. That's very well put. Christian, same question to you. What's so special about school choice?
Well, it's really an honor to be here at the Texas Values Summit. Thank y'all for all that you do, Jonathan and the Texas Values team. School choice is a landmark piece of legislation that I believe that will happen with great leaders like Nate Schatzline in the state house. And what we need in this state is an overhaul, a complete overhaul. In my county, Montgomery County, Texas, our state rep, Steve Toth, has worked in our libraries to stop the corruption that's going on. And I'm not faulting every single superintendent or every single school board member that they should know exactly, every time that there's something bad. But when they find out about it, they should do everything in their power to remove it. And State Rep Steve Toth has done a good job in calling that out. And that's what we need, is we need to purify our libraries of corruption that will taint the minds of our youth. And when it comes to parents, the best thing that they can possibly do is know what their kids are learning. And if you can't afford right now to send your kids to private school or homeschool, then you need to be spending time with them around the dinner table. Put your cell phones down and have conversations with them and ask them, what's going on at school? What is your teacher teaching you? And those types of conversations will be really beneficial. But I concur with colleagues up here about it's so important that this legislation is passed, because if those dollars can follow the child, if parents can keep more of their tax dollars to be in charge of their children's education, we will keep our state going in the right direction for generations to come.
Well, let me follow up on that a little bit. So, is there any doubt in your mind that the expansion of school choice has been fueled in large part by the fact that parents have kind of created a groundswell of anger at the schools for the political propaganda and the ideological propaganda that's been coming to our students?
Absolutely. I tell parents all the time, get involved in politics, because you have to be civically engaged. You have to know what's going on. You need to run for school board. If you can't do that, support good people who do. Or send your kids, this is a plug for my organization, to Texas Youth Summit. We have free conferences where we work to educate those young people with the right Judeo-Christian and conservative values. But whatever you can do to help your students and help your youth know what the right thing is for their lives, to find purpose in God and country, do everything that you possibly can. And to best answer your question, there's so many different ways that you can combat the left in the educational institution, and school choice is a part of that, but it really all starts at home with the family unit. That's why the family unit is so under attack. God loves a mother and a father being able to raise children. Divorce is really, really bad for our country.
I'd love to add to that as well. And it's so well put, even when you go into family values, what we're seeing right now is a breakdown of the nuclear family across our state and across our country, really. And we see an administration like the Biden administration that's pushing that from every single angle. And so when we see things like, as we see some pastors that have been incredibly bold, and then we've seen other pastors, I've been a pastor for 11 years and involved in education. Look, we as pastors have got to stand in our pulpits and start talking about truth. People start talking about issues and they try to make them political. No, these are righteousness issues that we're now having to deal with policy, because the church has abstained from their role of setting the tone for the next generation. And so there's a lot to be said, but I wanted to share a couple statistics that just shocked me about this school choice topic, and that is currently right now, 60% of Texas voters are in favor of school choice legislation. That's not 60% of Republican voters, that's 60% of all Texas voters. On top of that, if you take just the voters that have children in school ages, 74% of Texas voters with school-age children want the money to follow the student. And this is what's so important, is that we get that message out and start using the real language, because we have other elected officials that are sharing, saying, oh, I live in a rural district, we can't do this, my district doesn't want that. It's just simply not true. The reality is that yes, you might in a rural district of Texas might not be feeling the indoctrination that we might feel in Houston ISD or in Dallas ISD or in Fort Worth ISD. But I can assure you of this, if we do not give parents genuine options so that their children are not indoctrinated, then the future teachers that are going into those rural districts are going to be down the road 10 years later doing the same thing that's happening in Dallas, Houston, Austin, and all of these other districts where our children are literally being attacked on a regular basis. And so please do not buy into the lie that rural Texans don't want this. We all want parents to be empowered. We all want educational freedom, and we all want indoctrination to end in the classroom in the state of Texas.
Couldn't put that any better. And you're talking about giving parents choices. So I want to follow up on something. This past session, during the regular session, the Senate passed House Bill 100, or maybe it was Senate Bill 100, and they appropriated, I think it was $500 million toward school choice, and to a lot of people that sounds like a lot of money. However, our budget for public education in the state of Texas is just north of $94 billion, which makes the amount that they appropriated less than 1% of all of our education funding. Talk to me a little bit about the legislature and kind of where you might see us headed during special session on something like this.
Yeah, at this point, and I want you guys to share as well as far as being in the policy world. I mean, you're in the offices really just as much as I am, but ultimately, we saw $500 million, like you said, being put in that. It's just simply not enough. And I applaud the Senate for the bill that they sent over. The issue is this, I'm a universal school choice guy. I believe that all parents should be empowered. I don't think that this should even be a debate. We've got to give this to every single parent to have an opportunity for their child's best educational experience in Texas. However, when we're talking about starting a program, many times what you'll see is very small, integral steps inside the Texas House to go in. I've heard rumors of different things that what we believe the rural Republicans will vote for. Just to give you kind of a landscape of the voting plane for a bill for education freedom, our greatest opposition really isn't the Democrats, because I don't know if you know this, but in Texas we have a Republican majority, and so but we have to get the Republicans on board that don't believe their voters want this. And so I would encourage you that if you have a state rep that's anti-school choice, to get on the phone, give him a friendly call, and explain to him or her why we need this legislation. I would also say this, what I think we can all agree on in Texas, and what I believe will be in the bill that's going to be presented during the special session, is that children with disabilities need special care, and they should not be held back from getting that special care when we are literally funding billions of dollars into a woke industry that we need to push back on. And so I believe special needs students are going to get the care that they need throughout this special session. I also believe that what we're looking at inside the legislature is schools that have low rankings. The last bit of legislation I heard presented had to do with F-rated schools. I pushed back on that because we don't have many of them in Texas, and said we need to have any school district that is underperforming from the average within that scope as well. And so I think that's going to be some of the focus that you might see in legislation, but you can guarantee whatever the bill is, I will be fighting on that House floor for absolutely more than what's in the bill.
Michael, same question to you.
Of course, yeah, and I'd like to provide a little bit of perspective on the programs that were offered. So choice, as I mentioned, looks different in different communities. Charters are a type of public school that currently exists that families can apply to that they don't have boundaries around them. You don't have to live right next door to go to a charter. That's a great option for many, many families, but there are over 66,000 kids on wait lists to go to those schools. And those are families that have gone through the application process. They waited in line, but the thing is what charters do is if there are more applications than seats, they hold a lottery. And if your child gets picked, you get a seat. And if they're not, then I'm sorry, but we just don't have space for you. That's not good enough. You look also at another option in Texas. There's magnet schools that independent school districts run, also great schools. Some are dedicated to fine arts, others sciences and math. There were 110,000 kids that applied to those schools in the most recent school year. 24% were admitted. The other 75% were told, I'm sorry, we don't have space. So this idea that families already have choices, it's just not true. So what would education savings accounts do? ESAs have been established in a number of other states. There's 31 other states right now that have choice programs. ESAs, you can find them in states like Florida and Arizona. And what they are is, it's a way that if a family applies to the program, the state can say yes, and they create an account for the family. They put an amount in that account that is comparable to what the child would receive in a school district. And then the family can take that funding and use it, direct it towards the educational setting that makes sense for them. And that might be tutoring. That might be instructional materials. If your child wants to learn cursive a couple years ahead, you could buy those instructional materials for your children. You could pay for tuition at a local school, or therapy. If your child is disabled and needs therapy, you could receive that with an ESA. So ESAs really offer flexibility to families. They allow them to find the right educational setting for their child. And so that's why you see in states that have choice, the entire community gets better because of that. I mean, you talk about rural Texas. Rural Florida has seen a doubling of educational options in rural areas. Why? Rural communities are wonderful, right? There's a lower cost of living. There's a pace of life that people love. But in Florida, there's teachers that said, like, there's not opportunities for me here to offer the type of education I want. But with ESAs, there were teachers that were moving back from Miami to their rural hometowns to start schools in rural Florida. These are public school teachers of the year who are now offering opportunities in their hometowns, right? And they get to work directly with parents to design an education that they agree on and that benefits kids. Education happens best when teachers and parents are working together and collaborating. ESAs allow that. They support that. And that's the direction that Texas needs to go in.
Follow up for you, Michael. What would you say? So we've had traditionally some opposition to school choice from teachers and teachers unions, of course. But what would you say about teachers? Would school choice hurt teachers or benefit teachers?
It would definitely help them. And that's what we're seeing in Florida. So you do see opposition from the teachers unions. ESAs will help teachers. You will have the same number of kids in the community as you did before needing an education. The difference is that the parents will have the funds directly in an account that they can divert to whatever educational goods or services they think are best. And teachers are also, we've gone on the road with Governor Abbott, and over the last few months, we have met so many parents and teachers that have said, yes, I agree with this and I support this. And the teachers express frustration at many things that they have to deal with currently. Paperwork, testing. They're frustrated by a lot of things that distract them from just being able to collaborate with parents and teach children in the way that they know is best. So ESAs allow teachers to provide the services, the support that they know are best for the kids, and they free up parents to buy those services when their kids need them and not 2 or 3 years down the line.
Question for you, Christian. Wouldn't school choice be the answer to a lot of the problems we face? Social conservative issues, even pronoun usage, sex ed in schools, if we could get that implemented, especially in terms of having parents have control over their kids' education.
Absolutely. If competition works in healthcare, if it works in business, it'll definitely work in education. And that may also cause our public school system to straighten up a little bit. Because in some of these even red counties like Montgomery County, you have sometimes very liberal teachers that are hired that are pushing critical race theory. They're pushing gender dysphoria. They're promoting their lifestyle, and it wouldn't be acceptable for a heterosexual person to talk in a promiscuous way. So it's not acceptable for a homosexual person to talk this way either. And so it's not appropriate. And, we need to have this type of competition because it'll help our state and our country long term. Our youth are our future. We need to make sure we make the right investments.
Well, and let's go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And one of the things that we saw in the bills that were offered in Senate Bill 8, which passed out of the Senate and the House considered, right? Public schools could offer services to kids in the program, and we see this in other states as well. So if families want to purchase a history course or an elective course in physics or something like that, or there's a great early childhood education program at their local neighborhood independent school district, they could still purchase those classes, those services, and the district could opt in and offer those, right? And our greatest hope is that it does make public schools better. If you look at San Antonio, for example, the city of San Antonio has the greatest share of students in non-district options. Why did that happen? There were a number of charter schools about 10 years ago that saw lower academic outcomes in San Antonio. They saw that there were not great options. They started to open up campuses. Families loved the options that they were offering, and so they enrolled their children in those charter schools. San Antonio ISD saw that, and they responded by starting to do exit interviews, for example, with families, asking them, why are you transferring out? What are you looking for? And then they started to collaborate more directly with families, and they designed schools around what they were hearing families wanted. And they started launching schools around what families wanted. They have now, there were 27,000 more kids in DNF schools than there are today. Their quality, San Antonio ISD's quality has gone up substantially. Those kids that were in D and F rated schools are now in A and B rated schools because the district is listening to parents.
Well, and let's extend that even farther. I mean, is there any doubt that, the healthy competition that we've seen from what we would call the Texas miracle, from companies coming in, from our economy becoming so strong, that could apply to school choice as well, and it does apply to school choice to create stronger and more accountable school districts.
Well, Texas has the largest economy, the 10th largest economy in the world, larger than Russia and Canada combined. So Texas economy is thriving. There's a reason why all of these Californians and New Yorkers want to move to places like Texas. It's because they know that Texas is the place to start a business. It's the place to build a business. And likewise, it should be a beacon of hope for people who want to raise their children in a traditional way, with the right values, Texas values, if I'll borrow a term there. And
That's okay, we don't have that patented.
and we need to have that type of competition. We need to have that type of innovativeness. We need to have that type of customizability. Because if we do that, we're going to put Texas in position to continue to be the greatest state in the nation for many years to come.
Let's switch a little bit on our topic. So, Representative Schatzline, so the House appointed a select committee not too long ago to look into some of the issues on school choice, and they came back with a report just last month, and they kind of outlined some of the ways they felt like they saw ways forward for this issue in the House. I think, Michael, you testified in front of that committee, if I'm not mistaken. And it does seem like that the report kind of outlined a scaled back version of something that Governor Abbott has said that he would veto a diluted version of school choice. What are your thoughts on that?
He should veto a diluted version of school choice. At the end of the day, I believe Governor Abbott has been very clear. He has led the charge really across our state, going school to school to school. He'll be in our community this coming Friday night to talk about this very issue, because Governor Abbott understands that parents should have the final choice in their child's education. And so at the end of the day, what I truly believe with this issue in particular is we've got to go big so that we don't scale down to the ability to where it's a failing program that we put in. Ultimately, some of the things that we pushed back on inside of the bills that were presented to us, one of the things that many of our homeschool families, our private school community really pushed back on was any type of legislation that would require additional government testing, such as the STAR test, inside our private schools or homeschools. I submitted a bill this last session to eliminate STAR testing altogether because I think it's a failed policy system, I feel like it's a failed testing system that we have to get rid of. And so ultimately, we cannot take a bill that number one, has no teeth and is not actually going to help students, and just say, oh, look, here, we did it, Texas. We as Texas should be leading the way. If we can lead the way in the economy, as Christian so eloquently put, if we can lead the way in jobs, then we should be leading the way in innovation when it comes to education as well. And so when we're looking at this bill, we've got to push back against any additional government overreach with testing. We also have to push back on a couple other things. You know, one of the original bills that we saw come forward that we were opposed to was a bill that said that there would be essentially a switchback program, or a bill that says, hey, if you're currently in private or homeschool, you no longer can apply for this education savings account. And we didn't like that, because what we know is that there are families that are sacrificing right now, getting second, third, fourth jobs within the household to be able to send their kids to private school. Families that have sacrificed and now only have one income in the home because they said homeschooling our kids is better, so that we can ensure that their education is one that's Christ-centered or one that shares our values. And so what we have to look at is we've got to get it right the first time. It's not just about getting a bill across the finish line. It's about getting a bill across the finish line that's actually going to improve educational standards in the state of Texas.
Michael, you want to talk a little bit about your experience with this committee as well. You know, and I was thinking, as Representative Schatzline was talking about this, if the school choice critics had been right, you know, Arizona was one of the first states to jump on the bandwagon with this, and if they had been right, Arizona should be decimated by now, right? So I think we're showing that this works. But talk a little bit about your experience.
Absolutely. So you look at other states and the history with this. There is, I think the speaker created this committee to look specifically at educational opportunity, and they're also looking at the current situation of teachers and what they're hearing from teachers. So Chairman Buckley on that committee, he's also the chair of the House Education Committee. He carried the ESA bill in the House, right? That hasn't happened for almost 30 years. The last time there was a chairman that carried a school choice bill was around 2000, so a little over 20 years ago. But it's remarkable that happened. There is a monumental shift in what is happening in education today, and I think that is one of many signs of that shift. So during COVID, I think a lot of parents got a line of sight into their kids' education in the way that they hadn't in the past, right? And they saw that either the quality of the education was not what they would have expected, or that the education was not aligned with their family values. And that concerned them. And so they started to take a real active role in their children's education in a way that they hadn't. And I think that's something that as parents we need to own sometimes. I mean, so my children came home during COVID. The schools all closed. And my daughter was in pre-K at the time, and I saw that she was ready to read. She was sitting there looking at books and like flipping through, and of course we read to her, or we were reading to her at the time, but I realized she was ready to sit down and literally learn to read. And so that cued me in. I was like, oh, that's my responsibility to my daughter, right? And that's something that I didn't see, because so many times we as parents, we just drop our kids off at school and we say, all right, make them a good person. And then we come back at 3 o'clock and we expect them to be better than we dropped them off. That's not good enough. Yeah. That's not good enough. And so during COVID, I think a lot of mothers and fathers got that line of sight. We felt that responsibility, and that's not going away. And so parents want a more active role, and the committee, I think, sees that. You saw, I mean, for example, there was another committee, there's a lot of committees, right? But there was another committee that worked on, specifically on support for students with disabilities. And they considered education savings accounts. And it was very controversial with that committee. That was about a year and a half ago. Who came to speak for ESAs? It was parents of students with disabilities. Yeah. They opened it up and said, okay, who wants to speak about this? Parents came, and they said, look, I'm getting good services at my school district right now, but it was a fight. It was really hard. And we've talked to parents that have spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to get services for their kids. ESAs provide another option for those parents to fulfill the responsibilities to their children.
You know, it's It's 4:00 in the afternoon, and I thought I might have to give everyone permission to slap the person next to them in love. 4:20, but these guys are so engaging. I really appreciate them. So, Christian, I want to bring you in real quick, and then we'll kind of go around final statements. But talk a little bit about school choice from homeschooling perspective, homeschoolers, and maybe even private education a little bit more. You touched on some of that a little bit. Can you go into a little bit more?
Well, in all of the homeschooling families that I've talked to, they've talked about the strains that they go through to be able to afford this endeavor. They're mostly Christian people who want their young people, they want their children to have the values that they hold dear. And there's a large cost that comes with that. I've talked to many families with sending their children to private schools. It's even more expensive, and they want, the commonality is they want them to have the right values, and it's just sometimes not feasible, and they're left with no choice. They work, full-time jobs, and they pick up their kids, and they have to help them around the dinner table with their homework. But they have so much on their plate already that it just is not feasible for them in that situation. And I understand their concerns and their plights. And so if they were able to have this voucher program to go through and pass through and to be signed into law, it would change everything for them. That extra money, where it would follow the child, would really help so many people. And I think our kids would be so much better for it.
Well, real quickly, and I appreciate you guys so much. Let's go around and just tell me your kind of last statement on what you think it's going to take to get school choice finished up, and what folks here can do to help out.
Well, I think there's a few different areas of answering that question. First and foremost, I believe that the most important elected position in the state of Texas is a school board member. And so I believe that they are literally holding the future generation of Texans right now. And I would just encourage you that as we go forward, there's a couple different action steps. Number one, you can guarantee that I'll fight on the House floor. I know Representative Toth is in here. He'll be a fighter as well on the House floor with me. And there's a few others that are really leading the charge. But I want to encourage you to call your state rep, gather people, call 10 of your friends, get your local Republican clubs, whoever you know, to call in to that elected official and let them know we are in favor of educational options that are going to prepare the next generation to love our country, share our values, and take Texas to the next step in education and lead the way. And then lastly, I would just say this: we need to pray for a shift in the House. I believe strongly in Scripture, and the Scripture is clear. Where two or more are gathered, there He will be also. And I believe that the Holy Spirit can do more in our prayer time than we can do in any of our efforts. And so we need to bring God into this and recognize that we've got all these groups that are, quasi-teachers unions saying that it's anti-biblical to not support public education. Well, let me tell you something. It is anti-biblical to support any organization or to continue to push any organization that is pushing our children further away from God. I hear so many times, keep religion out of school, where the religion of secular humanism has made its way into our schools, and it is time to take a stand and show every single public school who we are, that we are willing to fight for our kids. We are going to support them as long as they're focused on education and not indoctrination.
So I think the thing that needs to happen in order for education savings accounts to be established is, well, one of the things is to understand what education can and should be at its best, because ESAs are a means to that. So what is education at its best? Yes, it offers economic benefits, right? We talk about, in state policy, they talk about college and career and military readiness, right? So this is, you'll get a job, you'll be able to provide for yourself and your family. And that's good, that's necessary, right? But education is so much more than that, right? Education also provides civic benefits. A proper education teaches our children why and how they should care for their neighbor. And it is even more than that. It gives them practice in virtue. It has a moral benefit. It has an economic, civic, and moral benefit. And that practice and virtue is critical, not just to living, but to living well. Those virtues are critical to flourishing, to being happy as a person, to being a good person, somebody that has the virtues of justice and moderation and prudence and courage when it's needed, but also the virtues of faith and hope and love. We can't say that, sorry, we're just going to set those virtues to the side from 8 to 3 o'clock every Monday through Friday, and then we'll take them off the shelf on Saturday and Sunday and teach our children to live a life of those virtues. That's not good enough. Our children need practice in those every day. We all need practice in those every day.
You're not going to come to Texas and push wokeism in our churches and in our schools.
That's right.
You're not going to teach critical race theory. You're not going to teach queer theory. You're not going to shove this down our throats and we're going to be okay with it.
Right.
That, period. And so it's so important that they recognize that we mean business. And I love that scripture where two or more are gathered. Because when we stick together and we encourage one another and we stay in the fight, it may feel like Austin, for example, is the blueberry in the tomato soup, as Rick Perry once pointed out. But the reality is that blueberry's gotten much bigger. They've taken parts over of Harris County. They're going into Tarrant County. They're going all over the state. And they're mobilized and they're energized. And so we have to stay in the fight. We cannot be discouraged. I tell people in Harris County all the time, they lost Harris County in 2018. There's nowhere else to go. You can't just move away from the problem. You have to stay in the fight. We have to take back Harris County. We have to take back different places throughout the state. We have to win back Texas.
You guys are great. We cannot be more grateful for the service that all of you have showed on this particular issue. Christian Collins, Michael Barba, Representative Nate Schatzline. Let's give them a big hand again. Thank you, guys.